So in my how to walk video, I'm going to be referring to the foot tripod, and I did another very short video on what is a foot tripod and how the foot is designed. So make sure to watch that video as well. But in review, the foot has 3 points of major contact on it. And we're going to be using all those as we walk and kind of blade through a walking gait. So as I walk, I kind of sit my foot down like this and I blade through like that, because by design, the foot is designed to pronate, which is to turn in towards the center of the body. So it kind of does this, and it's a way to distribute force. I don't just slam my heel in the ground when I'm walking or slam my flat foot onto the ground. That's poor gait mechanics. We want to walk well, and so we're going to use the foot as it's designed to distribute force instead of having all that force come back up off the ground into our knees and back, which can cause other issues. Hi parents, I'm here to do a video on how to walk. Now I know that might sound kind of ridiculous because, you know, everybody just goes around and walks and thinks they have it figured out. But if you go back into the history of physical education, walking was actually one of the most important lessons taught in historic physical education programs. They also taught how to stand and they taught how to sit. And I'll be doing videos on these as well, so make sure to look for those topics in that PE 101 playlist at the Lean Berets YouTube channel. Okay, before we start all the different video clips of me walking well and me walking poorly, demonstrating different things that I see all the time with children and adults, let's talk about one of the critical things to walking. Maybe one of the most important things about walking is where your head position is. Now we've talked about, you know, in the how to stand video, how to stack everything up while staying relaxed, because the further everything is forward, the more the muscles work on the back side of the body to compensate. But right now, let's just talk about head position and walking. You should have your eyes on the path, but not your head. So I did corporate health a long time. We always talked about eyes on path, paying attention to where you're walking so you don't set yourself up for a trip or a fall. And then you have a recordable injury, and that's a problem. So as I'm walking, I don't want to be doing this, because when my head goes forward, it really puts a strain on the back of my neck and all my back muscles all the way down. So remember, your head is like a bowling ball in weight. If you displace that weight forward, these muscles on the back side are like, whoa, we got to put the brakes on, otherwise you'll fall flat on your face. So when I'm walking, I want to have my head up in neutral, upright, and I look down with my eyeballs. And maybe if I'm crossing a curb, I'll drop my head and look right there, but I'm not going to be walking like this, and I'm definitely not going to be walking like that, because I could walk right into a pole or into a hole, and it happens all the time. So just keep that in mind. Eyes on path is not head on path. Use your eyeballs up and down, left and right, and scan where you're walking. Remember the foot tripod, where I got the anatomical model out. There's 3 points of contact there. The lessons on standing balanced on both feet, that's going to come into play with walking. Because when I walk, I'm trying to use all those 3 points in each foot. And what I'm doing is I'm setting my heel in the ground, pretend this is the heel of the foot, and I'm lightly touching that base of the fifth ray that I showed you in the anatomical skeleton of the foot. And so I kind of blade my foot like this. I don't set my foot flat on the ground and stomp it, because even with walking, you shouldn't be making a lot of noise. And when we're running, we should be running softly. So there's a gentleness to this too. So pay attention to that, because I'll do a couple of video clips with really loud feet, because I've often seen like people just making too much noise when they walk, and that's another way to mess up walking and really take a lot out of your body at the end of the day. Plus you could cause some issues with your knees and your back as well. The difference between walking and running is when you're walking, you always have a foot on the ground. When you're running, both feet are off the ground, even if it's just for a brief moment. So that's the difference. Now people can walk very, very fast. There can be Olympic level race walking that, you know, those people can walk faster than many people can run. And so it can be very, very quick as well. But we're going to talk about just very simple gliding through gait. Gait is your walking pattern, that's what gait means. And gliding, smoothly gliding, moving from the joints instead of gimping. And gimping is like, you know, you're really laboring, and you don't want to work hard when you walk. We're not talking about fitness walking right now. What we're going to talk about is just walking across the room, or walking to the other side of the house, or walking from your car into the grocery store. That kind of walking. Fitness walking is something different. So just gliding gait, relaxed, and think of your body being upright but not being stiff. And so posturally, the more we lean forward or the more we lean to one side, the more work must be done by the muscles on the opposing side of that to keep our body upright. And so ideally, we want to be pretty straight in terms of balance when we're walking, so we don't have to work so hard. So what I'm teaching you is how to walk without using a lot of energy. Okay, it's just going to make it really, really easy. All right, and you do actually lose balance just for a moment when you're walking. So if you took a step and you didn't catch yourself, you'd fall flat on your face. So balance is important with walking. Gliding is important with walking, and I'm going to demonstrate just a normal gliding gait now, and then I'll go into some of the things that I see often with children and adults that aren't being done that should be done.
Alright, here's some shots of me just walking normally as I would go down the trail just for a casual walk going down to the store or something. So I don't have a perfect gait. I don't know if anyone has a perfect gait, but it's pretty decent, and it's actually something I still work on and play around with. So the idea is to move from the shoulders freely. You'll see a little bit of elbow bend kind of at the end. My feet are pretty straightforward, as you'll see in the other shots, and my head is fairly upright. My head is a little too far forward posturally, but I know that. My feet are not sticking out more than 10 degrees, so my hips are within that tolerance or that sweet spot. No more than 10 degrees external rotation was a recommendation.
I'm going to show you some examples of what people don't do that they should be doing when they're walking. And so the idea is to make walking as efficient as possible and glide instead of gimp. In the clips that you saw me where I was just going back and forth with a gliding gait, I was moving a lot from the shoulders. And this is a very, very critically important point to walking, especially running too, but right now we're talking about walking. So when I walk, and I put my left foot forward, my right arm should go forward at the same time. That's contralateral. Contra means opposite, okay? And it's a lateral a relationship there. And so I should be freely relaxed and moving from the shoulder, and my arm goes up. Right at the end of that range of motion, I've got a little bit of an elbow bend, okay? Now I'm going to demonstrate when people are locked up in their shoulders and they move from the elbows, what that looks like. It's not as efficient mechanically. This is why I want you to learn how to move from the shoulders, not the elbows. Okay, while the biggest problem I see with walking is not moving from the shoulders and just moving from the elbows, one of the other issues I see is the arms are like wet pieces of spaghetti. Like they're not neurologically innervated whatsoever. They're just dangling there like jellyfish. So I'm going to show you that walk. And you might laugh, and I'm telling you, I've seen this time and time again for years with people. And so we want to integrate and move the whole body holistically, all right? Everything firing in the right sequence. So here's what the arms look like when they're not part of that equation. Okay, remember with the walking, also the how to stand video, I demonstrated the parallel feet, right? And the idea that, at least in history of podiatry, we don't want to externally rotate more than about 10 degrees. From a mechanical sense, that really stresses the knees out. Remember, the knees are hinge joints. They like to move in a straight line. They don't like to twist. They don't like to rotate like the arm does up in the shoulder. It's not like the neck that can tilt and move in all different directions. Knee's very simple. It's a very simple joint, likes to move in one line. And to get the knee to let go of stress and not be bound up, the idea is to have the feet pointed forward. And think of your kneecaps like headlights in a car. Like when you drive, your headlights point the direction that you want to drive the car. And as you turn the wheels, the headlights go that way. So as I walk, my headlights on my kneecap should be pointed forward. And if your feet are rotated out along with your legs,
it's like your legs are trying to go this way when you're trying to come down the middle. And the bind is in the knee on each side. And so we don't want to do that. We want to line up the feet, point them straight forward, roll through that foot tripod softly, and glide through that gait with biomechanical efficiency. Very relaxed, not stiff. Okay, I'm going to talk to you now about asymmetrical walking from the shoulders. Asymmetrical means something's out of balance. Symmetrical is balanced. And so what that means is a person is moving with one arm back and forth, you know, like they're supposed to be from the shoulder, and then the other side is stuck. And so it makes it very, very difficult to walk when one arm isn't moving and the other arm is. It's like your body's like throwing itself to one side all the time. And so you're doing a lot more work every single stride. And so the idea is to glide through gait and not gimp and not labor and not wear yourself out. So I'll demonstrate that now. Okay, I'm going to talk to you about gliding from the hips now, because we've been talking a lot about the shoulders and moving from the shoulders and how important that is. But what about the hip joints? If the hips are tight, you won't just lift your leg and let the leg go back and go through that full range of motion. People start walking kind of like a pirate with a peg leg. You know, they start trying to lift up and rotate from the back. It's almost like they're dragging their hip forward and setting it back down, and when they do that, they can lift the hip up and then bring it back down, and that causes the low back to bend a lot. So the idea, if you think paddles, the idea is we just do this when we're walking instead of this. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate a poor walk from a hip standpoint now, where I'm kind of dragging the leg up and forward because the hip doesn't move very well. Okay, when we're talking about gliding gait, the hips are gliding, right? It's like paddles going back and forth instead of this and rotating the lower back. Everything's gliding from the shoulders. And if we're gliding in gait, we don't do a lot of tilting, meaning I'm not doing this back and forth. I just move through space. There's not a lot of head travel, meaning I don't go up and down a lot. I don't shift left and right a lot, and I don't tilt a lot. I just glide through my hips and I glide through my shoulders, and I just move through space balance. It's very, very symmetrical. So we're going to do a head shot now of me walking into the camera where I'm doing a lot of tilting. And again, this is a common gait that I see in people because they maybe haven't been taught how to walk properly, which is what I'm doing now, or they could have a pre-existing injury that really makes it impossible for them to do it properly. Okay, another problem with walking I see often is people just make too much noise when they walk. They slam their foot into the ground and they're not using their foot in the right way. The foot has a lot of shock absorption. It has an ability to bend and articulate. And if you just slam the foot flat in the ground, it's not going to do that spring absorption for you. So remember, with the foot, we kind of blade through. We set it down on the heel and the outside and kind of turn through, push off the big toe. And the idea is not to stress out your knees, your hips, and your low back with all that jarring every single step. So start listening to your walk as well. If you make a lot of noise when you walk, that can be a problem. Okay, another big problem with walking is when people scrape their feet. Now, oftentimes you'll see this in older people. When they're afraid of falling, they keep their feet even closer to the ground, or they become very, very weak in the legs and they can't lift their leg up very high, or their hips get very tight and they're restricted in the hips. So now we're not gliding. And so scraping the feet is a way to set you up for falling, because now if there's a little crack in the sidewalk or root or
some kind of debris in the ground, a little rock, you could fall much easier when your feet aren't lifting. So the idea is you should lift your leg and set it back down. Lift your leg and your foot and set it back down, and not drag. So that's another thing to listen for when you're walking, or to listen for in other people when you're analyzing gait. What kind of sounds do they make? Is it foot slamming? Is it scraping? Is it scraping on one side and not the other? These are all things to know, and as you increase your physical literacy about walking, you'll get better and better at walking and more efficient.